create a business model that is relationship focused, both on the client side and the candidate side. And ultimately, there's 3 pillars of the business that I'm looking to build. It's going to be that recruitment, and it's going to be number 2 is going to be the second thing that a lot of recruitment companies do not address, and it's a massive problem companies are facing. They obviously are struggling with finding talent. They're also, in this day and age, struggling with retention. People change careers and jobs more than ever, and I want to build a model that not only helps on the talent solutions and the recruiting side, but also answers that second problem, the retention, because a lot of companies are putting a lot of money, training, and effort into, raising this talent, finding this talent, hiring, training, and then they don't see the value at the end of the day because they leave in 6 months, a year, whatever. Third pillar of the business is advisory. On the back end on the retention side, there's just so many young professionals that have no idea what they want to do.
All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. I'm your host, Vin,
And I'm Shane.
And today we're joined by my man, Kenny Hansell. What's up, brother?
What's up, guys? Happy to be here.
Of course, dude. Happy to have you here. What a phenomenally interesting background you have as well with all those.
Yeah, I like that cowboy one, too, in the back.
It's actually a podcast studio in my building. They market it as a podcast studio.
That's
pretty sick.
That's
Why
awesome.
the back of the cowboy? That's interesting.
That looks like an Indian chief, though.
They've got it's a cowboy. It's an interesting design.
Because we're all just a bunch of cowboys out here trying to make it. All right, so.
I mean, I'm in Austin, Texas. I know you mentioned the hard cutoff at 5-4. We're all in different time zones. I'm actually in CST.
Cut off at the top of the hour.
Exactly.
So, Ken, can you go ahead, introduce yourself to audience, tell them a little of who you are, what you do, how you're doing it, whatever you want. Share it. Let them know.
Yeah, for sure. I'm Kenny Hansell, born and raised outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in a really small town called Perkiomenville. So, when you're learning to spell as a kid, the first thing you learn is your address. So spelling Perkiomenville, Pennsylvania, I just kind of started spelling really large words at an early age. But I ended up going to college in Charleston, South Carolina. Wanted to experience some warmth. I toured Syracuse and Penn State, and both those college tours had about 3 feet of snow. So I was over the snow. Went south for school, and then in Charleston, I really wanted to study journalism, and they didn't really have a journalism program. So I ended up just being communication. It was pretty vague. It's a liberal arts school, so you kind of do a little bit of everything. And, in that whole process of going through college, I started a house painting company through an entrepreneurial program called Entrepreneurs Across America. Student painters, that's the program that they do it through. So I had run my own $65,000 house painting business my sophomore year. And then the year following that, me and my mentor trained and hired 5 people to run their own house painting companies. And I think, total, we did like $250,000 roughly. And so I kind of got into the entrepreneurial space, and I'd always been an entrepreneurial minded guy. And, after graduation, I had some decisions to make. I didn't really know what to do with a communication degree. It's really, you're shooting from the hip when you're graduating college. You kind of just got to figure it out on your own. And I took an opportunity in Kansas City to work with a uniform manufacturer. And, there's a couple of reasons I took it. One, I was super down to just go to the middle of nowhere where I knew nobody and just grind it out. 2, it was an incredible offer. It was a job I was not qualified for, but I really was interested in biting off more than I could chew and getting my post-grad adult life started. I was in Kansas City for a year. I ended up visiting my best friend from preschool out in Los Angeles, who worked at The Price is Right, and had a wild weekend in Los Angeles. And I really realized that I wanted to get to a large market, somewhere with a lot of opportunity, because I still hadn't found what I wanted to do with my career. So I really wanted to be in an environment where it felt like the sky was the limit. And I could just kind of get involved with the community and just figure out what I wanted to do because I still hadn't figured it out. Fast forward 7 years, moved to Austin, Texas. I now have my own talent solutions company called Connect Work, where I'm really trying to change the stigma of recruiting. It's a really old school business that is pretty transactional. Get as many clients as you can, send out a bunch of resumes, get a fee, hope something sticks. And I really want to challenge that narrative and create a business model that is relationship focused, both on the client side and the candidate side. And ultimately, there's 3 pillars of the business that I'm looking to build. It's going to be that recruitment. And it's going to be number 2 is going to be the second thing that a lot of recruitment companies do not address. And it's a massive problem companies are facing. They obviously are struggling with finding talent. They're also, in this day and age, struggling with retention. People change careers and jobs more than ever. And I want to build a model that not only helps on the talent solutions and the recruiting side, but also answers that second problem, the retention, because a lot of companies are putting a lot of money, training, and effort into, raising this talent, finding this talent, hiring, training, and then they don't see the value at the end of the day because they leave in 6 months, a year, whatever. And then the third pillar of the business is advisory, because on the back end on the retention side, there's just so many young professionals that have no idea what they want to do. And more than ever, people are exposed to more ideas of what they want to do. They're exposed to more industries, and it's really hard to figure it out. It's not like the generations before us where, they did what their grandfather did. They did what their dad did. They kind of had their avenue carved out for them, and then they stay with one company for their whole career. Now there's more opportunity than ever, and all of this opportunity can be, it gives a lot of anxiety to young professionals, and they can't figure out what they want to do, and they're, unhappy. So that's where that advisory portion comes in. And I'm involved in a number of other things, particularly revolved around community, wellness. At the end of the day, I'm most passionate about storytelling. And I really do think, having a talent solutions recruiting company is along those lines as well, because I'm helping people continue their story of their own career journey, as well as the story of companies looking to hire particular talent.
Man, you have one hell of an interesting model. I mean, what else to say about that, right? I think it's interesting because, one, you're very methodical about it, right? Like, you could clearly see that you've given it thought, you've broken it down. I guess was there like an intrinsic drive that pushed you into building this? Did you feel like there was a greater meaning? Did you just see a problem and want to address it? Did you have your own thing that pissed you off that made you run out there and be like, screw it, I'm going to build this? Like, what was it for you? What got you into this desire to build?
Yeah, I think, when I moved to Los Angeles, I actually moved to LA with the idea 2017 of pursuing an acting career, because I knew I was a creative. Whenever I was in theater or creating films or even music with my friends in high school growing up, I was most happy when I was creating. And I hated doing homework. I just hated doing like stuff that I didn't want to do. But when I was editing a video or creating something in SoundCloud or what, I'd stay up till 4 a.m. editing it without falling asleep. So I figured out, like, I clearly love creating because it doesn't feel like work. I'll stay up till 4 a.m. doing that without hesitation. And then I'll just wake up on a normal day. And to me, that's kind of where I figured out, okay, I need to pivot. So when I moved to LA, I had an idea of what I wanted to get into. However, it's expensive and it's a super saturated market in terms of entertainment. So I was on my buddy's couch. I interviewed at 3 different companies. It was ADP. So I guess payroll services. It was Stryker, medical device sales, and it was a recruiting company. I ended up choosing the recruiting company. I can't really recall what exactly it was about. Oh, I think it was because in my uniform sales company, it was outside sales. So I was in Kansas City. I was driving sometimes hundreds of miles a day, and it was very lonely. So I was like, I want an inside sales role where I can mingle with the office, get to know my colleagues, and not put hundreds of miles in the car. And just I was over that. So I chose the recruiting company. And, after 7 years went by, experienced COVID. I think COVID is where things took a massive pivot for me because I was already 3 or 4 promotions in. I was enjoying the growth at the company. And then COVID made me realize a couple things. One, everyone in the company had to take a pay cut because nobody was it was a really tough market. And when you're in a massive corporation, you're kind of told the niche that you have to focus in, the market that you have to work in, the terms that you have to work at, how you do business. And, it was a really challenging market. So that's when I started planning the idea of, hey, I really don't like working for a business that can decide how much money I make. When my salary got cut a certain amount of percentage, and the bonuses got taken off the table, that really kind of opened my eyes to saying, okay, I'm really not in control here. I really don't have any control over how much I earn right now, because right now bonuses are gone and my salary got decreased. And I'll tell you one thing, the cost of living in LA didn't change at all. And also I was locked in our apartment. We couldn't even go to the beach. So it was a challenging time. I'm grateful for all the challenges that I had to face during the pandemic, because it made me realize a lot of things, a lot of self-evaluation, a lot of evaluation of what I wanted to do. But I'm not gonna lie, it was a challenging 3 years. It extended beyond COVID because I really had to figure it out. One thing I did start during the pandemic was the idea of a podcast, the Espresso Self podcast. And ultimately, I just wanted to, I had I had family members, friends calling me, telling me about, hey, you're a recruiter. Can you hop on the phone with so-and-so, my nephew, a friend of mine, a family friend, because they're graduating from X whatever school and they're really struggling with their anxiety. They have no idea what they want to do. And it really put me back into my shoes as to when I was in college. It's like, I didn't either. And so I really wanted to start the Espresso Self podcast where I could bring on entrepreneurs, musicians, athletes, artists, anyone from any career path, and talk about their career journey to hopefully give some insight to younger professionals to say, hey, the path to success is not always linear. There's a lot of ups and downs. And it was interesting because at the time I was also going through those ups and downs in the corporate world, and also figuring out what I want to do. But I really was empowered by a lot of these successful people's stories. And that's kind of where that's kind of where that creative egg hatched. And I honestly used it as an outlet for creativity, because when I was at a corporate company, there wasn't much you could do creatively. I was literally just pounding the phone, working with clients, and it was a 9 to 5. And then after work, I'd be like, okay, I need to go out. I need to freaking have a couple drinks because my mind is numb from all this work that I've been doing, and not really. It was not fruitful at all for me. So that's where that started. Eventually, I think it came to a point where I knew I could start my own thing. I was really turned off by a lot of just like the corporate politics. I'd seen some leaders that I really looked up to and admired leave the company. And then so when corporate structure changes and then you start reporting to someone who maybe just move to the office from another location and really hadn't had that rapport with you, it's just like, these aren't the same people that were mentoring me in the years prior that I really looked up to. And then also it came to a point where someone, I can't remember who told me this, but it's one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard. If you don't want the job ahead of you, your manager, i.e., what are you doing there? Like, what are you working for? And so I looked at the folks ahead of me, and I didn't want any of their lives. I didn't want to be them. I was doing the same thing over, and I would have just been doing it at a higher level. So I knew I had to pivot. And then at the same time, similar to what I had mentioned to you guys earlier, I noticed, it kind of sucked when you were working with 100 some clients and only 5 of them, 2 to 5 of them actually wanted to work with you. The other 95 were very transactional. It almost felt like you were pulling teeth. And it's just like, there needs to be a better business model where companies actually enjoy working with you in the recruitment space, as opposed to out of necessity. And they really hate working with you, and they work with 20 different recruiters and they just kind of hope something sticks. So that's when the idea of hatching a very relationship focused talent partnership type company came up. As far as doing the creative stuff, now I'm out also acting out here. I'm doing commercials and trying to get into TV shows, etc. I just kind of moonlight all of that stuff to get my creative side out. I'm working on some screenplays as well, but at the same time, I now have full autonomy over my business. Right now, I'm actively working with 13 different clients, primarily still in real estate in the construction space. I also do work in the healthcare space as well as the tech space. So I am branching out into other verticals, and the old classic mindset would be, Ken, focus on one thing and dominate that. Well, if I have a close relationship with a client, say that I've met in my building, or say through a friend of a friend, and they tell me what they're looking for, the type of job they're looking to, types of jobs they're looking to scale, the type of professionals they're looking for, I have all those tools and those resources. There's some incredible recruitment tools out here, and I have 8 years of recruitment experience. I'm happy to work with clients at a very client-friendly, I guess you would say, partnership agreement, one that works at a place that we're both happy with, that really incentivizes us working as true partners, open relationship. And then also it really prioritizes not only the recruitment side, but also the retention side. So that's kind of where all of that hatched. It kind of just came to be honest.
It's funny too, because I think that the what do we want to call it? The pandemic, sure. The pandemic showed a lot of people that safety is very much an illusion. There's so many times, and I myself, I was a city worker, especially during the pandemic. I was a firefighter. And it's funny because everybody was always telling you, hey, get the city job, safe job, you get your pension, you get your benefits, they can never get rid of you. You'd have to do something crazy to get fired. And people always give up whatever it is that they think they want to do because of the lies that we're told of, like, hey, go get a nice job and a career. They'll give you a 401k. They'll match whatever you put in. You'll retire at this age. You'll get this. And what did you see during the pandemic? Mass layoffs of city jobs, mass layoffs for first responders. Even you have nurses, you have hospitals that are short staffed, firing nurses because they didn't comply with what they were told to do, and then firing them despite being short-staffed and saying we need more staff. Like it really should have opened up a lot of people's eyes. And I'm not even going to talk about anything else because I'm not going to make it political. I'm not going to do any of that.
Yeah.
But I will say, if you didn't see that there's no such thing as job safety from the pandemic, you are still blind. And so if you really think, if any of you are listening to this and you really think, oh, my job is safe, I won't get laid off, I have 10 years, I have a pension, it could all be taken from you in a moment. And it's 100%. Not because you, right? It's not because you're a bad person. It's just because that's what could happen. So,
I think it was the biggest thing for me was just coming to terms with no one's coming in to save you. That was the big thing for me, because whether you had managers or mentors, et cetera, helping guide you, lead the way, when all of that happened, it was at the end of the day, the only competition is myself and getting better, especially on the bad days, the low days. It's just I need to do things where I'm in control, because at the end of the day, I'm the only one that can save myself, so.
I'm curious, recruitment's so powerful to every single business because it comes to employment. Mm-hmm. And hiring the right people, and more important, that the people that you do hire are going to be there for a while because nobody wants to restart that same process. So I think you're in a niche that's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. Unless there's a niche for just robots and, you know, it's just essentially a plug and play at that point, which hopefully we're too far out from that. From somebody who's in employment, I can speak on this just like you can. And we could probably have a bunch of beers or coffee or whatever it is that we want to do about how important it really is. So I'm curious on the sauce here. I heard about all the tools that you have, and I heard about your background and why you chose this, and, you know, your wide versa demographics for the clients that you actually have right now. But what's your sauce? What's your sauce on actually picking these actual candidates and saying, I think this person is going to be a good fit?
Damn right.
It's a great question. And I think 8 years of experience really helps you with your just overall ability to judge someone's character right off the bat. I will say that I think being able to assess somebody's character from an initial call is super important. Like when I first started in recruiting, you know, you finally get someone on the phone because no one wants to take a recent college grad that's just pounding like phone numbers on a list. No one wants to talk to them, especially because it's probably pretty obvious that they don't really know what they're talking about. So when I finally had someone and I had their resume, you know, I was like, let's go. And, you know, someone was like, does he have any references? No. Why has he worked at 8 companies in 6 years? Well, he has this story and this story. It's like, I was picked alive. And, you know, 8 years of recruitment experience will really teach you, like, you got to have your BS goggles on. You need to really be able to read through, you know, all of the stuff that, you know, that everyone's going to have an excuse or a story for. So I really do think it's experience with it in terms of the sauce. Like, talking to someone who's been doing it for, you know, 5+ years is definitely super important if you're talking about the sauce. I think it's really important to know your client, not only what your client does, who they are, how they identify themselves as, but personally knowing the hiring manager is massive. Because, you know, if you're working with 100, 200 clients, and eventually I do want to scale my business to have be able to work at that capacity, but also continue to have that really strong relationship focus. It's really important to know those hiring managers one-on-one, because you can really start to understand, hey, will this person not only work on paper, but will this personality mesh well with this specific hiring manager? And the only way to get to that level is to really know your clients. So right now, I do not do any outbound business development. Everything has been referred to me through clients, friends of friends, etc. And I meet with them in person. I'll either go to their job site if it's a construction company. If it's a healthcare provider, I will go to their practice, or I'll sit down and have coffee with the hiring manager. And same thing with the tech side. The only reason I mentioned the tech side was because South by Southwest recently happened. I know this is coming out in 2 to 3 months, but it's become a tech conference. And I've met so many founders that were looking to scale and struggling with scaling. And I spoke with them about all the different recruitment problems they've had in the past. And I was like, it's me. I'm the founder of this company. You're the founder of that company. Let's be creative. Let's come up with a custom solution that answers your problems, and let's work together. So I hope that answers it, but it's basically to really get to know the founder and the hiring managers, as well as the 8+ years experience to really know when someone's bluffing and when someone's authentic.
So let me give you a scenario here. So I have a problem, and maybe that you could fix it. And I just want to see how high end this can actually be, right? So I have a company that has over 500 employees.
Okay.
However, I have a problem with a sales rep. I cannot duplicate myself or my sales director's talents in the last 2.5 years, right? Can't find one. The main thing is mediocrity. That's what it is. That's the only reason why these people are getting fired, is because they're mediocre.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's they don't want it the best or they're not putting the extra initiative in there, results vary. And you'll be able to tell within the first 90 days. So what I've come across being I own a virtual assistant company. So being an employment agency is that people on a high-end sales basis, right? When you're offering something like a $70, $80, $90,000 salary plus commission that can earn great money, you interview a lot of sophisticated, smart, witty people with great backgrounds, which also comes in the case that they're professional interviewers.
Yep.
So you mentioned bullshitters, but at the end of the day, how do you really weed out professional interviewers comparatively to testing it out and saying, yeah, their work ethic is shit, or yeah, this person is great at interviewing, but they actually can't get the job done, or whatever the case may be. So
yeah, no, it's a great point. Here's my first take on it is I think the whole notion of what a good sales professional is a little blurry, because a lot of people will say it's a great BSer, it's someone who's confident, etc. I personally think the best salespeople are the ones that ask the most questions and they answer. And because you can't sell something until you know what somebody's pain points are, to what they need. So, you can talk to a lot of people that can polish themselves up and, seem sharp and seem like sharks, etc. But ultimately, you probably don't want the cheesy, the quote unquote cheesy car salesman. What you want is someone who asks questions, really dives deep, understands the problem before providing a solution. That would be one thing. Yeah, I think that would be the main thing. And then also, I think it's super important to really get to know them. One, references are massive. References are huge. So with where I'm at in terms of my confidence as a recruiter, I used to struggle with that because I was like, by the way, I need 3 to 4 references. And they're like, oh, I'll get those to you once I get an offer. And I'd be like, okay. But now I'm like, hey, in this job market, I'm not even booking you an interview until I know that there are 3 to 4 people that will go out of their way to speak highly of your intangibles. And then you educate the candidate on why that's important. And you say, that's important because companies are tired of hiring people that don't pan out after 6 months. So I really need these references up front. Either you don't hear back from them. Okay, so they didn't have references, right? They were BSing. Or they'll be like, hey, just sent them in your inbox. Here are 4. I had that the other day with someone whose resume wasn't the best, but the references were incredible. And so it provided an opportunity for me to better serve that candidate.
Yeah, I think references are amazing. That's something that I actually haven't really dived into that much as my type of company. Interesting. That definitely sheds some new light. As far as the foundational there, yeah, offering a service, you got it spot on with dealing with objection handling, right? You obviously want to build some sort of value in order to do that. So yeah, but references, I haven't explored too much into that realm.
References are huge for me.
Because it's been that way for, 100 years, ever since people put it on resumes, but I've never actually called on references, right? I've relied so much on background checks and financial checks, and we do like pretty heavy stuff in the background to making sure that where they've worked, they have worked, but I actually haven't relied too much on references.
If they're going to be good, they're definitely going to have people that will be able to literally be on the phone with you and say, oh, they're good.
They're good. Yeah, no, I get it. Something
as simple as it sounds.
Yeah.
You also should be doing that exercise where you tell them to sell you the pen, see what they do.
I definitely put them through the ringer, but that's what I'm saying. When you put something on a high salary, you get good people, but then a lot of other stuff comes in line, which is why it doesn't work out.
Yeah. And I would say the third thing with sales is, it really depends on how does the product or service align with the sales rep, because more than ever, I feel like young professionals want to feel aligned with what they're doing with work. And, the sales is so wide ranging that people can be in an industry that they're just not passionate about, or selling a product or a service they're not passionate about. That's the thing with sales is it's not like, let's say a surgeon where you go to school for 50 years and you want to be a surgeon. Like, some people just get stuck in sales because it's the only thing they could find. So, and with that, they need to find something that they're passionate about, because you don't necessarily want someone that's doing sales just to have a job. You do want them to at some point be aligned with the product or the service that is being offered. And if you can get that buy-in from your sales professional, they'll be much more successful if they believe in what they're selling. And that might be a direct correlation from their manager. Like, if their manager can instill that confidence in them to believe in the product or service, or that might be just the sales professional actually being on board with what they're serving or selling.
I think it's a very textbook response and answer, and I respectively disagree. I think sales reps personally are fueled by money. How can I make the most amount of money? And I'll believe in whatever product you tell me to believe in.
I just worked with so many people in the recruitment space that were recruiters because they didn't have anything else to do. They wanted to move. They're like, oh, I'm passionate about helping people.
Yes.
But this is sales, weren't they? And they end up moving to HR or something like that. Yep. So, I think the sales bucket has a lot of people in there that aren't really about sales. So I do agree with the point you're making. I just think a lot of characters and a lot of professionals fall into that sales bucket.
I agree.
And, there's that 10% in there that's actually like want to do sales.
That's who I'm trying to find, man.
It's actually probably a lot smaller than 10%, to be honest. But.
It is, but it's those exact reasons. It's those people that are fueled by money. They're fueled by finances. They're fueled by making their life better. And all they've known and all they want to know is sales, and every day is a new battle. There's a small type of people out there, and when you meet them, you're like, that guy's a hustler.
Yeah. I will say that hustle is harder and harder to find as time goes on.
Agreed. And I'm not talking about the used car salesman that's mastered a pitch, that does drugs, that comes in there 8 to 5. Yeah. That's like, great. It's you'll notice a hustler when you see them. They're just that type of person inside and out. And you're like, I need that one. I need that person. Yep. And it's so tough to find because there's master interviewers out there. And that's why I'm saying it's a mix of confidence and doing it a million times, and
for sure,
even having a great resume and background. But I appreciate you sharing the tips. I think the references is a great thing that I just overlooked based on how simple it actually is. Like, if you're that good, other people will say that you're that good.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this has been an enlightening conversation around sales and recruiting and all things fun in organizations. Ken, we are coming up on the end of the episode, so we got to ask you our final 3 questions for you, my man.
Yeah.
Number 1, this is the 1% podcast, but not because of the fact that we're billionaires yet, but because of the fact that we believe anybody could be a 1%er if they're striving to achieve something great in their life, if they work to be better than the 99%, much like these apparently almost non-existent sales guys. So Ken, what would you say is your version of a 1% life?
Man, my version of a 1% life. I will say that it's going to be around having processes and people on your team that allow you to live life on your terms. And what I mean by that, and that's something that I've struggled with during this entrepreneurial journey, is that I've got the creative mindset. I've got a billion things on my plate, and it's just chipping away at each one. And, I just finished reading and re-listening to on the audiobook while reading it, Atomic Habits. Great book, because they're basically like, stop doing so much, focus on one thing. And and it's not even talking about work. It's talking about your daily routine, like build healthy habits. And I know it sounds so small and so little, but I guarantee you a majority of the 1%ers out there have a process in play. It works for them. They say no to anything that does not serve their goals. And so being able to say no is super important. So I want to ultimately be in a place where I say yes to only things that I'm passionate about. I say no to a majority of things, and I have systems put in place where I can maximize my efforts in connect work. I can maximize my efforts in my entertainment ventures, and I can still enjoy my life because the processes that I've built in my life are able to support the life I want to live and be happy and build a family. I'm not there, but eventually I definitely want to be there. And I'm aware that it all starts with the processes that I set in place now.
Yeah, well said, man. That's literally what I work on with every single client, because much like business, your personal development is all a matter of a system and a process. You don't even necessarily need a goal. If we just sat there every day and we just focused on systems and processes, eventually you'd hit massive goals that you probably didn't even set for yourself. That's the
for sure
thing people don't realize. It's so simple.
That's the thing I took away from Atomic Habits. It's like on my goal board for the year, I have my goals, and Atomic Habits, they're just like, everyone has goals. What is the process that you do on a day-to-day basis to achieve that? And I'm like, I got to scrap this whole goal board. I just need to have a process board. Screw your goal of trying to, so it's like, if you're trying to become in the 1%er, don't have a goal of being a 1%er. Think about, how can I get 1% better every day? And if you can do like small little incremental changes like that, you'll be in that group whenever that time comes, but you can't do it by not getting better every single day and not putting those processes in place. So I'm really focused on that right now.
That's it. My man is a Atomic Habit coach. Hit him up now.
No, I'm literally the worst at it. I'm doing my best to hone in on what I know my weaknesses are. So
I got you, my man. Call me. All right. Next question for you, bud. So what is the best piece of advice you've ever received? And don't say do a small habit every day.
Best piece of advice. Best piece of advice. I would say right now, because I am doing so many different things, someone most recently said, all right, well, what's moving the needle in your business ventures? Where are you making money? What's paying the bills? What do you have the most control in? And it's connect work. It's my recruiting business. So it's like, while I am focused on scaling and doing some other things, I need to put all my effort into what pays the bills, what makes the money, what I have the most experience in. I've got 8+ years in recruitment experience. I am, even though I've done plays and musicals and theater growing up, I'm a rookie in the acting world. So it's just like, I can't be giving 50% of my effort to auditioning and being rejected and 50% to my recruiting company, which can be scaling way faster. So it's really putting more things into the baskets that will move the needle for you.
As my mentor used to call it, MMA, money making activities. Cut out everything that isn't that. Love it. All right, Ken, last question for you, brother. So people, you've heard what this man does and how he does it. Ken, tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can get involved, how they can be in your ecosystem. Where can they find you? Shout yourself out.
Yeah, for sure. Easiest way is just drop me a follow on LinkedIn, Instagram. Those are the two most active things I'm on. Ken Hansell on LinkedIn, at Kenny Hansell on Instagram. I've been told X is the next big wave for people in the entrepreneurial and like the tech space. I'm looking to build version 2 of my website in the next 3 to 6 months. So I need to get more involved with X. And then you can also drop me an email, ken@connectwork.space. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for being on the episode. Stick around for a moment after. We appreciate you having you here. And there you have it, folks. If you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, and you need somebody that you could trust, that could be thoroughly and properly vetted, you got to go to my man Ken. Don't be sleeping on him, or you're sleeping on your growth of your business. Boom. That should be your new tagline. You're welcome.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
As always, everybody, thanks for joining us for another episode of the 1% Podcast. Like, follow, share, subscribe, comment, connect with us. Let us know what you think. And I'm your host, Vin.
And I'm Shane.
And that was Kenny. See you, everybody.
I appreciate
Bye,
you,
guys.
legends.